Thank you and a warm welcome to everyone. Um, we were quite overwhelmed with the response that we got to our inaugural event. When we conceptualized the program, the joke was that we would likely have only 8 road team members register for the conference, but we ended up having more than 600 registrations, which was really nice to see. At the outset, we conceptualized Scaleup Health more to bring together both current as well as prospective entrepreneurs in the life sciences and healthcare segment, an opportunity for them to share their stories, uh, all the good things about their companies and the sector, and also all of the many challenges that the sector faces. And the aspiration is to provide a platform for all of you that comprises a mix of get togethers, a focused set of curated conversations through the year, and then culminating in an annual conference, which we hope we'll be able to do in person next year. We'd love your feedback on our plan as well as how you thought the first event went right after. But look forward to your joining us today, and of course, many thanks to McKinsey and Company for becoming knowledge partners in our inaugural event. We have a very exciting set of panels lined up for you today. But before we get there, I thought I'd spend the next 15-20 minutes really presenting why we at Eight Roads believe that the life sciences and healthcare sector is truly at an inflection point today, and why we believe that the breadth and the depth of companies that we will see in the next 4 or 5 years will be unmatched with respect to what we have seen thus far. Let me move on to the first slide. Now, these are a set of metrics that a lot of you may have seen or read about, but I will use this slide more to present a picture for how we think healthcare will evolve from here on. If you look back a decade ago, uh, a lot of the focus was on making sure that there was healthcare infrastructure to cater to the big mismatch between demand and supply, and also to bring India at least to the levels of other emerging markets in terms of benchmarks. So over the last decade, all of us have seen a lot of expansion in hospital infrastructure. Most of that has been driven by the private sector, and some of it aided by venture capital and private equity. And a lot of it has been focused on the metros and the major cities in the country. Some of that growth in terms of hospital infrastructure expansion began to stabilize about 2, 3 years ago in our observation. But what we've seen over the past couple of years has been the next wave of growth, which is really exciting to see, and a step increase in the growth. And the factors contributing to that growth are quite different from the earlier decade, and I'll name 4 or 5. Number one is we're seeing a lot of expansion when it comes to the smaller tier 2, tier 3 towns and cities, as well as the rural areas. A lot of the residents from these areas would travel to a Mumbai or a Delhi or a Hyderabad for treatment. But through COVID, there was a fear to go to the larger cities. And so people stayed back in the smaller towns, looked for proximate hospitals, and when they liked the experience, they stayed on. So that's number one. Number two, a big factor that has evolved in the last couple of years has been Ayushman Bharat, our national insurance coverage scheme. And we are seeing a new trend of hospitals that are fit for purpose for Ayushman Bharat, and really finding business models that deliver both high quality care as well as profitability for the hospitals. Number three has been the continued rise of the single specialty business model that drives focus, it drives operating efficiencies, and also a better community environment for patients. Number four has been technology, and perhaps we should have moved technology up to being number one, but technology has played two important roles. Much backbone for the hospital system to drive better utilization, as we've seen with the advent of many hospital aggregators. But also, two, is for the first time being able to provide at scale a continuum from primary care to secondary care to tertiary care. As all of you know, tertiary care has been largely driven by the private sector, but the government's key focus has been primary care. And for the first time, you see technology bridging that gap. Finally, in terms of access, as affordability has gone up, per capita GDP has gone up, insurance penetration has increased, people are demanding best-in-class treatments. So if you look, for example, at all of the vaccine availability and therefore the building up of vaccine infrastructure in the country, I was surprised to hear that immunotherapy is now a 500 crore market opportunity in India. India will soon have an ability to treat CAR T patients for cancer locally. And you're also seeing best in class drugs, whether it is for diabetes or women's health, being introduced into the country. So, with all of that, while we are excited, of course, by the fact that the $195 billion market will expand twofold to close to 500 billion over the next 10 years, and our sense is it'll probably beat that number. What we are more excited about are the drivers of that growth, which will be quite different from what has driven growth in the last 10 years. Let me move on to the next slide, which lays out some of the macro factors and segment-specific factors that are driving growth. And I'll club them into 2 or 3 buckets. The first being affordability. Affordability is on the rise, driven by per capita GDP going up. You also see both private as well as government insurance, increasing at a rapid rate. Number 2 has been awareness, and a lot of that awareness is really thanks to both our digital internet penetration as well as the growing base of smartphone users in the country. So you've got affordability going up, you've got awareness going up, and then the third part of that flywheel is access. And access has gone up from a policy perspective through 3 factors. One being a lot of these production-linked incentives or PLI schemes that are coming up for medtech and pharma. We're also seeing a biotech ecosystem for the first time coming together, and whether it is as a result of the BIRAC grants, which have been very helpful, also an attempt to set up incubators and biotech parks like the A-STAR program in Singapore. And the third pillar of the broader access initiative has been the NDHM, or the National Digital Health Backbone, driving interoperability. Now, if India is able to pull off interoperability, it will be one of very few countries to be able to do that. Even the US today is not totally interoperable when it comes to healthcare systems. And the ability for a patient to walk from one provider of healthcare services to another without worrying about, whether his or her clinical records will move between providers will be really transformational. So all of these factors have really played a role. But then the key question to ask is, have they led to impact on the ground? And the answer is an absolute yes. As we move to the next slide, we have seen rapid adoption, and all of us have seen in terms of tech-enabled models for delivery of both healthcare products as well as services. India has now become the undisputed generic capital of the world. About 40% of generic drugs in the US are manufactured by Indian companies. India used to be third on the list in terms of US FDA approved manufacturing facilities, behind the US and then Italy. But India over the past couple of years has moved to being number 1. There's strong growth in medical device exports. Clinical trials are back with a bang after a lull in between. And you're also seeing newer therapy regimens coming into the country. The interesting statistic there is that India has the largest number of approved biosimilars in the world. I think our latest count was close to 127. And the last aspect is surely but surely, slowly but surely, we are seeing the coming together of a biology research base, as collaboration between academia and the industry continues to grow. And when you bring it all together, the next slide is an interesting one. And we stepped back and said, look, how do we think India will evolve? And we, from our perspective, we've divided India's innovation journey in three phases. And what changes in each phase is the definition of the word innovation. You had a first phase, which was between independence and the early 2000s, where innovation was largely price led. And that was the right thing to do because India was a self insured market for a long period of time. And the other objective of innovation was to make sure India was self sufficient, both when it came to drugs as well as when it came to treatment facilities. And I think both those goals have been established and achieved very well. You've seen a second phase of innovation, which has been somewhat crunched, and that has happened in the last 7 or 8 years, where the definition of innovation has moved beyond price. Of course, price continues to be a very important factor, but beyond price, people have been looking for convenience. They've been looking for features. So if you look at the emergence of tech-enabled models for healthcare services and products, you look at the development of cutting-edge medical devices, like in areas of ophthalmology, or you're beginning to see the early foray into drug discovery and novel therapeutics. And all of these, in our minds, are coming together as India aspires to get onto the next wave, which is where the US has been on for many years and China has embarked a few years ago, which is that we believe that as you look forward over the next decade, innovation will now not be defined locally, it will be defined globally. It may or may not be price driven, but it will definitely be cutting edge when it comes to quality and it will be world class. And that's the India that we are very excited to participate in as Eight Roads. So as you think about some of this, the question that that of course comes to bear is, all of this is fine. Are you also seeing this in terms of investments into the sector? And again, I think this is no surprise for many people. Investments into the sector have steadily grown over the years. We saw a rapid rise in 2021. The interesting thing was not just the rise, but it was the mix of segments that investors were putting their money into. It was not just pharmaceuticals and not just hospitals, but a lot of it went into digital health, as you can see from the 49%. And even the year-to-date deployment, given the macro uncertainties, continues to be very strong when it comes to healthcare. What I find more intriguing is the bottom chart. If you look at India even 5 years ago, the only companies that had got over the $1 billion mark when it came to valuations were the large pharma companies, which have been around for a long time, or then a couple of the large hospital chains. But in the last couple of years, many more companies have crossed the unicorn threshold. And it's really nice to see that they are across a range of sectors, whether it is pharma supply chain, it's biosimilars, it's US digital health leaders, consumer health, healthcare aggregators, and then next-gen manufacturing models. And that's really interesting, and we hope that trend continues. Many of these companies were actually created less than 10 years ago, and most of them have had venture capital or private equity investors since their infusion, since their inception. So this is one part of the flywheel where money is being invested. The second part is, are investors making money? And there are two aspects to that. Are the public markets generally receptive to IPOs in this sector? And the public markets have been very excited about healthcare for a while. You did see some tempering in the 2016-17 timeframe because of US generic price erosion, but that has come back really strongly. And healthcare IPOs have been very well received. The other element when it comes to investors making money has been broader exits. And there again, healthcare has been steady and, if anything, on a rise. We think 2022 will be even stronger than 2021. And again, what's worth pointing out is that exits have happened across modalities. They've happened through IPOs, they've happened through M&A, not just foreign companies buying Indian companies, but also for the first time, Indian companies becoming acquirers, private equity becoming acquirers, and then a sale from one private equity firm to another firm, which is what we call secondary sale. But you also see exits happening across segments of healthcare, whether it's pharma, it's services, it's digital health, whether it's consumer health and other sectors. So the flywheel is nicely coming together. If investors put in money, they make good money. If anything, they are incentivized to continue deploying into the sector. And so the last couple of pages that I will touch upon are the proof of the pudding is in the eating. As 8 roads, of course, we're very excited about a version 2.0 evolving, but is that reflected in the themes that we are looking at? This is an internal slide that I'm very happy to share. And so whether it's disease management platforms or new age models for insurance, digital health clinics on the specialty side, next-gen manufacturing, both small molecule as well as large molecule. We are very excited about synthetic biology, the ability to create what is naturally found or synthetically produced through biology, whether it could be pharma intermediates, it could be flavors, fragrances, colors, etc. Consumer health, and finally the broader segment about around medtech and diagnostics. And I'll leave you finally with a slide that, again, hopefully shows you that we are putting our money where our mouth is and investing across the value chain. This is a set of companies that we have been very privileged to partner with over the last 10 odd years that we've been in the country. And as you can see, they range across the entire value chain. We don't see too many white spaces. Of course, we would love to dissect this wheel even further and continue to add to our family. But with that snapshot, I will transition back to Dia for our first panel. But thank you again for joining us.